Hello, I'm Sam.
I'm Carsey.
And I'm Derek.
And this is Unpacking Homelessness, the podcast where we take a deep dive into the issues surrounding homelessness in our communities. Let's get into it.
Today we have on the episode Lewis Harris. He's a dedicated public servant with a strong track record in community engagement, equity, and public policy. From serving as city council president in Mukilteo to leading DEI initiatives and disaster response efforts across Washington, Lewis brings a deep understanding of the systems that impact housing and homelessness. We'll talk about the root causes of homelessness, how equity must play a central role in solutions, and what real leadership looks like in this space. Lewis, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carsey, Derek, and Sam. I'm glad to be here.
So great to have you guys. And just as a little backstory, we all went to the same high school in Marysville. Shout out Marysville.
That's right.
Go Tomahawks. I think that's what we should say.
That's right. Yeah, go Tomahawks. You can't do the hand signal. I feel like that's inappropriate nowadays,
That's right.
but we did
That's
it in
right.
the day. We
That's right.
didn't know better.
That's right.
So Lewis, can you talk to us a bit about sort of the things that you've been doing in your life? It sounds like you've had your hands in a lot of cookie jars, so to speak.
Oh yeah, I think that's actually a good way to characterize it. After I graduated college at WSU, I really grounded myself in community service and just general service here in our home county, Snohomish County in Washington. I joined a local civil rights organization, the NAACP. I started my job, and this was again, after college. So I actually went into AmeriCorps and did some work supporting students with their academic enrichment. Then got into NAACP, then got into DSHS, where I determined eligibility for people to have basic needs met around food and cash assistance. And then got involved into politics, which is like kind of a road that I was bound to arrive to, you know. And so I got into politics, and yeah, I've done, as you mentioned, DEI initiatives, and have volunteered with some emergency response organizations, and all kind of in the vein of wanting to support the community that I grew up in. But more importantly, though, like what I've seen in all of the realms that I've worked in is that we, one, have a changing world, right? And that kind of speaks to what you were saying about the tomahawk chop. We didn't have language or knowledge about like how doing these things impact different communities, and like how that perpetuates inequity and almost erodes opportunity for folks, even though there's laws that say that there's equal opportunity. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just one of those things where, like, I was lucky to be able to find this as a passion of mine, and so yeah, certainly pursued
Yeah.
it. And Lord knows there's a lot of work that I've done, and a lot of work that still needs to be done, and it can't be done by just one person. So.
Sure. So, getting into DEI, that seems to be a topic that can be difficult to define or can be misdefined. Can you walk us through what that means to you?
Yes, absolutely. So, diversity, equity, inclusion, that's what DEI stands for. The reason diversity, equity, inclusion as like a topic really came about, I mean, you can draw a line from history to today and say, ooh, affirmative action was technically DEI, or the civil rights movement was technically DEI, or women's suffrage was the fight for diversity, equity, inclusion of women, right? You can draw that line through our history and say that, oh, all of these are DEI. But really, DEI today is really about reconciling the historic inequities in institutions to ensure that there is equality. And I say equality there because I'm of the thinking around DEI that we have diversity, equity, and inclusion now so that we can become an equal society, right? You can't work from a place of deficit and expect to like do a couple of things to close that deficit and everything to be equal. No, like that's not how humans are. That's not how like society evolves. That's not how things change. And so you have to incrementally get to that point, right? And some of that incrementalism is education. It's, new initiatives to close opportunity gaps, either in housing or job opportunities or, bank financing for businesses and stuff, right? There's so many factors of what DEI is meant to do today to change the outcomes of people who have been historically marginalized, right? And so, you know, pick your pick, right? We're talking women, we're talking about Black people, we're talking about Asian people, we're talking about people of color, we're talking about LGBTQ people, we're talking about people of different abilities, right? We're talking about different, mental capacities or emotional capacities in society, and making sure that our institutions can address everybody's needs and meet everybody where they're at in a way that creates that equality that we believe is out there and that opportunity that we believe and are told is out there, but in practice and in the statistics, it's not, right? And so it's like, so that's what DEI is putting, doing the social change or the social learning that's needed to create that equality. And it's messy and it's uncomfortable. And I think the DEI movement was really clear about that, like throughout it. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, but there's a next step to it, right? It also needs to be inclusive. It also needs to reconcile that uncomfort. It can't just let it sit there. You know what I mean? You can't tell people, you're contributing to a history of evil and not give them a pathway to change that or not address how that makes them feel. You know what I'm saying? Because if you don't do those things, you get people who will go out on their own and say, I'm just going to reject this. This is not something that I see as, I might see the inequity, but you're telling me I'm a bad person when I'm not a bad person. And it's like, I can't reconcile those things. So I don't get it out of my workplace, get it out of off the TV. You know what I mean? And so that's
Just avoid
what
the topic altogether.
exactly. And so my point there is that like, that's what DEI is. It's an undoing of the institutional harms that have been perpetuated. I don't think that it is really in a good place right now, especially with the current administration and political climate. But I do think that that's a factor of like those DEI professionals missing the mark on some of those things, right? And so we'll see how society reconciles that because I think it's still really important.
Sure.
Yeah,
So
and
I'll go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Chris.
I was going to say, I imagine that a lot of the people that are rejecting it are people that don't, because I think sometimes too, it's the wording that we use, right? I think when you just call it DEI, people are like, oh, it's just DEI, and it's not actually breaking down what it means and why it's important.
Mhm.
I've heard what I feel like is just rhetoric of like, oh, let's just hire, the person of color who's like, not qualified for the job, but just because they have a disadvantage. And I think ultimately, like, to reject DEI is to not admit that there's a problem. And when we
Yes,
look at the statistics, even in homelessness, I mean, the
yes,
amount of people of color in Denver, it's 50% is the people of color in Denver. And I can guarantee you the population is not 50% people of color,
right.
you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're talking about the disparity, right? That's kind of what internally we call in the DI, it's the disparity, right? The statistical disparity, right? Where it's like if if like a population, I'm going to use statistics here in Snohomish County, is like if the amount of population of Black people in Snohomish County is like 1.5%, 2%, right? And there's the other demographics like white, Asian, and the other, but the reflection of people who are incarcerated or the people who are homeless is more than that, more than 3%, then we're talking about numbers that are not representative of the population, right?
Yes.
And so ideally everything would be representative of the population, right? Like there's 40% people are Hispanic or like 60% people who are white. Those numbers should reflect in the criminal justice system and the school system and achievement gaps and all of those things, but they're not. You see disparities, and so that what that tells people, or what that should tell people, is there's a reason for that, right? And the question is what is the reason? And DEI was saying you have to look at the past to understand what's going on today, right? And you can't change what happened today because what happened today, you can't just like magically change the stuff about how people are living today because you also have to reconcile the history, right? Because you can't like yeah, you have to reconcile the history, right? Which means understanding like what really happened and talking about that, you know what I mean? Instead of kind
Mhm.
of instead of glossing over it or whitewashing it or making it something that's not a big deal or making it like not a big deal, right? Because
Mhm.
in reality, it is a big deal, which is why there's those disparities, you know? So it's a whole circle.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
where have you been holding these conversations, Lewis, in your work history? And can you kind of fill us in on what those conversations look like?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, where have been I've been having these conversations like everywhere. Like my entire like career has been aligned with like social like equality, social justice, human valuing humanity, you know, of the like. I mentioned that I was a part of the AmeriCorps, right? I was in AmeriCorps and created academic enrichment programs, which are basically just after school programs for students who are 50% or lower of the median income or, you know, who are low income or, you know, less than moderate income. Um, so like working with those students, like you get to see, you know, how they're showing up to school or like how they're engaging, right? And you get to see like how they're doing in school or how they relate to other people. And when you see like, you know, maladaptive behaviors or like, why are they so quiet or why are they showing up with tattered clothes? The question that, you know, a humanist or somebody who cares like has is like, why, right? And then you start to look at that person like why are they showing up this way? Oh, it's because they have a broken home, or oh, because their mother's never there, or oh, because their parents are on drugs, or like, you know, they have a traumatic experience or something, right? So there's so many things
Mm.
that contribute to just students. And so that's my one that's that one experience of like how my experience has like shaped what I've seen, right? Outside of that, I worked at, you know, Washington, we call it Department of Social and Health Services, which administers food assistance and TANF benefits, right? SNAP. And I mean, working with those clients, those are the clients. I mean, not only are you working with families and individuals who are low income, no income, but you're also working with people who are homeless, right? And so, like, I mean, we do face-to-face interviews, so like we have to ask questions like, you know, how are you making money, like how are you living, where are you living, all these things, and you get stories and you hear about the stuff, right? And that sparks conversation both with the client but also with your colleagues, right? Because you know when you're talking to somebody who's gone through trauma and you know it's just like you know sometimes people project their trauma you know emotionally and like you have to reconcile that after you're done with that interaction. Like, you know, you might chat with your coworker and be like, dude, like, what's going on in the world? Because we've had all these clients today who are just struggling and like, what's going on, you know? And we might find out something's happening, right? So it's like, that's the second example. The third example is I worked with the NAACP in Snohomish County, which is a civil rights organization. And obviously, I don't, it's not obvious, but Snohomish County is a predominantly white area. And you know, we look at the like disparities in, you know, joblessness or incarceration or economic opportunity. We, as the civil rights organization in this county, like we get people come to us with issues. Like people come to us saying, like, you know, I think I'm being discriminated against at my job. Like this is what happened. This feels like discrimination. I need help. You know what I mean? And we were the only organization that was in the county able to address those things. And so it's like I had a front seat in what inequity looked like in lots of different sectors all throughout Western Washington and Snohomish County mostly, that reinforced my understanding about these things. You know what I mean? So it's like I've had these direct conversations. I've literally, you know, passed people to service organizations trying to help them. And I've done it for like 10 years. So it's like, so I have a bit of history. I'm also in politics, and you know, politics is the you know the sector that's trying to solve these issues because it comes down to policy, it comes down to government, um, And so I've seen how government's trying to address these things and how the political realm is trying to address these things. And yeah, so I have a deep understanding, and let's just say, I'm steeped in it as I sip my tea.
Can
Yeah,
you
so
tell
can
us
you
a
tell
little?
us?
Oh,
Oh, go for it. Your turn, Sam.
can you tell us a little bit about what policy implementation looks like when it comes to policies that affect the homeless community or unsheltered community?
Oh my gosh. So that excellent question. Also a very complex question, right? Because to look at homelessness as a like a singular issue, you're missing all of the contributing factors, right? Um, Economic factors, emotional factors, societal factors, right? And it's interesting. And I mean, those are the factors that contribute to homelessness. I'm not even talking about how we address homelessness, right? Because that's where policy comes in, right? How do we address these issues, right? Is it, changing, student discipline standards so that, when a student gets in trouble, they're not in the school to prison pipeline, which will possibly inevitably lead to homelessness. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Or is it we need to create housing policy that lowers the barrier for people to one get into housing, lowers the cost for housing, lowers the cost for builders to build affordable housing. You know what I mean? So that's like some of the housing development and housing deficit kind of ways to address it through policy. And that policy goes from the local level to the state level. So, and Washington has been doing some I want to say great things, but I'm reluctant to say that because one, we still have the issues, and two, the statewide implementation of policy doesn't always translate to the local level implementation of policy, right? And so you have communities who are being held to standards that don't fit their community. And so you get kind of pushback, and it just creates a whole awkward tension in the political realm between the powers that be and the decision makers that either prolong policy or create policy that has holes in it that like when it's implemented it doesn't address all of the things and it leaves some people out, or it doesn't address this factor, and so you have to go back into the legislature and change those things. I mean, like there's so many factors in how you address homelessness. To say that any one entity is the one to do it is to just be devoid of how homelessness actually happens, right? I
Yeah.
mean, there's another factor out there, which is the social factor that is not governed by policy, and it's not governed by necessarily like organizations or service. It's governed by how people make decisions. You know what I mean? And like those are the things that I think we don't know have a mechanism to address the social factors, because like we just don't have a mechanism to address. We have the tools
Mm.
maybe like through the internet, but there's no organizing body saying, hey, we have to collectively say that this is not okay, or we have to collectively figure out how we address this because these are the gaps and we've seen the gaps. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So unfair question, Sam. Absolutely unfair. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, there's just so many factors, and policy is one of them, but people are the other. And so, yeah, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it, and it's really complex.
So, from what you've seen, do you feel like you have any theories on how things can be done better? Are there a couple of big ways that things could be changed more efficiently?
Oh my gosh, yeah, there, there are lots of things that can be done. I'm a firm believer in the housing first model, which I know it comes out of somewhere, right? Like there's like we've talked about the housing first model for years and years here, and that's really kind of contributed to the policy around changing housing availability, spurring the state to build additional housing and different housing types and different affordability levels of different housing types, right? Um, the I think I kind of lost my train of thought.
Yeah,
But
just if there are any other ideas on like big gaps where you see like, well, obviously this
yeah.
isn't going to work. It sounds like another thing you mentioned was that like there's a lot of these just sort of like blanket policies that just don't work in certain demographics of cities or geographies of cities for whatever reason. So it sounds like there's something to be done there.
Yeah, there definitely is. And I mean, you have to have really smart people doing this stuff, right? And I'm no shade because I have a lot of friends in politics that are implementing this stuff, but like if you don't have the background and you don't have the education and you don't have the connections to be able to say, this is the comprehensive way we address this, you don't have the time to be able to do that, you don't have the money to be able to bring the stakeholders together to do that, then you won't get that strong a policy that really addresses what you were saying. So, I mean, that's one issue is like the time between where we are in terms of the acuteness of the issue and how long it takes to get to a solution and actually implement it, like that time frame is decades and people don't really understand that. You know what I mean? Like I mean, yeah, it's a little mind blowing and it's a little big,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, like Washington State, we know we have to build like 1 million homes for people, and you need the private sector to invest in building to be able to do that. And sometimes there's policies around development that prevent that building from happening. There's also economic factors that prevent private sector from building, right? And so like back to your question about some things that like some policies that would be good or be helpful. I think you have to do it comprehensively. There has to be addressing the acute need. There has to be a sustainable recovery for people who are currently in homelessness. And then like there has to be prevention from people becoming homeless, right? Um, like those are the policy things, but I think like even more important, there's like educational things that people need to understand, right? Like y'all went to, Marysville Public Schools. Y'all didn't learn how to like budget. Like we talked about this, Carsey. Y'all didn't learn how to balance your
Yeah.
checkbook or how credit worked. You were
That joke.
square
Yeah.
dancing or square dancing or
Yeah,
whatever.
we learned how to square dance.
Yeah, like, but those are the points about education that would help people have the critical thinking or the decision-making skills to not fall victim to, what, enables homelessness. And don't get me started on capitalism because, like, that's a whole nother factor, right? Because that's another factor, right? Like our society's fixation on money and materialism and profit and like increasing profit year after year, like that creates inequity, that creates inequality, and it sometimes drives the reasons why people find themselves being homeless. You know what I'm saying? And it's
Hmm.
like you can't like, and that's the issue today. That is the issue, is that somebody's not saying we actually have to address all of these things comprehensively, like, and make sure we have metrics and we are like moving these things along and we have the accountability in place to see that this is actually helping, or have the flexibility in place to be able to change stuff once we've determined that it doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? And so there's
Hmm.
like so much, so freaking much.
Yeah, well, on that note, then, you have some experience as a city council president of Mukilteo. Can you talk to us a little bit about what sort of conversations are had at the city council level? What sort of involvement you have from the local community? Is that a good place to start?
Not in Mukilteo. And I say that jokingly, and I love my community, don't get me wrong. We don't have a huge homelessness issue here, right?
Mhm.
Our neighbors to the north in Everett, they have a homelessness issue, but we don't, right? We're a bedroom community, ferry community, right in the shadow of Boeing. Our homes are like, our median value homes here are like 750, $800,000. We have $1 million homes. We have a highly educated, residentry here, really compassionate, very family focused, one of the best school districts in the state, right? So like we have we're not the model community for like how to address homelessness,
Hmm.
right? And that's what I was saying earlier is like, okay, the state sees these issues, but the way they're solving those issues don't fit Mukilteo, right? Because like, for example, housing policy, they want to they basically mandated that planning and comprehensive planning and development policies on the local level allow for um, density, right? Which is like apartment buildings or condos or whatever, right? Allow for more dwelling units in a smaller footprint, right? Well, that's great in places that have a footprint to build on, right? Mukilteo doesn't have much buildable land. Like we have like maybe 2% of our entire square footage here in Mukilteo is buildable. Everything else would need to be redeveloped. Okay, so the term redevelopment is a is a catch 22 for people, or for some people who don't want development, they want their community to stay the same. It's a single family community, well-to-do, all these things. When you talk about densifying a community like this, people come out and they're like, no, like we don't want more people here. Our schools are great. If we add more people, it's going to clog our school district. It's going to clog our road system. You're never going to be able to get anywhere. And it just like breathing. Sorry, breathing because there's a disconnect, right? There's like and I'm not saying the people in Mukilteo don't care because there's a lot of people here who do. It's just like what the state wants to happen doesn't fit here. It just doesn't.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, part of the housing first principles is integrating into communities. And so you think that there'd be some pushback from Mukilteo if you were to start implementing low income housing, for instance.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we've already pushed back. Like our mayors wrote plenty of things, against the density. It is, I mean, we had like I don't remember the number. It was like over 100 residents like sign up on a like political action committee. Like a resident created a political action committee, got a bunch of residents to say no to additional housing, right? Like they organized here in Mukilteo saying no, we don't want housing, right?
Mm.
And when stuff like that happens, like people in positions of power who are elected, like they have to go along with their residentry. Otherwise, they run the risk of being unelected, right?
Mm.
And so you have this like weird dichotomy where it's like here's an issue, but because of the pushback and because of the way the political system is set up, like you won't always get alignment in how to solve those things. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And like I love democracy and I'm all for it and stuff. It's messy, it takes time. I'm for that, right? But there's a lot of other factors that prevent, policy from really taking shape and addressing an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like in Mukilteo, it sounds like what you're saying is it's a pretty affluent community. It sounds very clean, not a lot of homelessness, great schools. I mean, it sounds like an awesome place to live. So, couple questions come to mind. Like number one, how did Mukilteo get that way?
Good question. How did Mukilteo get the way it is? So Mukilteo incorporated most of its land through the annexation process, right? Started out being very small city, and over time incorporated more areas to become the Mukilteo that it is today. There are still more areas in what we call our urban growth area that we can annex to, increase the amount of residents, increase the borders of Mukilteo, but internally here in Mukilteo, we don't want to do that because once we hit a certain threshold of like a population, like some of the like state assets, like the Mukilteo Speedway, then become the city's maintenance responsibility. Right now, it's under the Washington State Department of Transportation. Once we hit, I think, 25,000 residents, that then becomes our responsibility, which creates like I mean, a whole system of need when it comes to revenue to be able to maintain and like like capacity as a city to be able to address the needs of all these additional people. Like it is a whole system that like doesn't always work the way like people at the top think it should work. Um, and yeah, it just creates an incongruency. I think the other like contribution to Mukilteo's affluence, and I'm not a history buff, so I don't know all the things, but we're right in the shadow of Boeing, right? Washington State as an economy is one of the best, I believe, in the United States in terms of like big name organizations, Starbucks, Microsoft, there's a Google here now, Facebook here. Like there's so many corporate like entities that have tons of good jobs. Like we're talking like corporate jobs, like engineer jobs, were, really good jobs, right? So because of that, you have good jobs, which means that like, people are, buying homes in the area and contributing to the economy, and it just creates, you get enough people who, are affluent in a certain area, then you get an affluent area, right? So it's like, so that's kind of how I believe that's a lot of what contributed to it. It's
Yeah,
also a fairy
interesting.
town, so.
You mentioned that a couple times.
Yeah, y'all have seen Mukilteo before, right? It's a beautiful community,
Yeah.
and like when you get on the hillside, like beautiful views of Puget Town. So like that's another reason, right? Is that we got a very nice slice of the Puget Pacific Northwest over here.
Yeah,
Percy and I grew up in a neighborhood that was very low income, but you could throw a stone and land in Mukilteo on the hillside. What's it called? Seahurst, Seaview,
Okay.
on the hill there.
Yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's Seahurst. But I also worked in Mukilteo. I worked at the Harbor Point Business Park right
Okay.
there, right
Yeah,
off the
yeah.
Speedway. Um, and yeah, it is really quaint. I would also like wonder too if part of the contributing factor to it not having there's nothing really there to attract an unsheltered community, or there's not
That's
really any dwellings. There's not like that I have seen or can think of like shelters or a lot of like low income community service buildings. There's not, I mean, Everett, which is the city north, they have the jail and the courthouse and lots of, Salvation Army,
yep.
lots of resources
resources.
for people maybe experiencing homelessness. So I think that's kind of the catch 22 is it seems like the more that cities implement structures and systems that can serve that community, they're also attracting that community to it.
100%. Literally 100%. Like,
I feel we see that with Seattle and Portland. Would you say that?
oh
Yeah.
my God, that's 100%. Like, yeah. And, I mean, if you, like, there's, also when you're in the homeless community, there's like, rumors and like direction and guidance of where to go and stuff, right? And yeah, people are pointing to progressive areas because, they're not going to be criminalized or shooed away. There's tons of resources. You can get a free meal, you can get a tent, you can get all this stuff, right? Which is good natured, let me help you. But when you got people who don't actually want to get out of that lifestyle for one reason or another, like they're just taking advantage of that, right? And like I hate to say that, but like it's called the trouble with the commons. It's a sociological principle that is a flaw of humanity and society, is that it doesn't matter what you do, if you have a resource, people are going to be attracted to that resource. And if you have like factors of scarcity or economic uncertainty or whatever, like people are going to want to hoard those resources, right? And so it's like, yeah, absolutely. The places with the more resources do attract more people who need those resources.
Yeah, the toilet paper example during COVID popped right into my mind of people hoarding resources.
That's ex excellent,
Right?
excellent
All the
example.
people hoarding all the toilet paper because the world was coming to an end. It's like, yeah, that's interesting. And so we talked to a guest, Clarice, a couple of weeks ago, and she's also just such a wealth of information and experience. And so she works for the public library here in Arvada. And she mentioned that their library took an approach of the the strength mindset instead of the deficit mindset. And
Mm,
it's the theory of that is like there's a problem. Do we repel the problem and try to keep it away, or do we embrace the problem and try to solve it, right?
mhm.
And not all cities are going to have the capabilities or the resources or the desire to do that. But for the ones that do, I think that there's maybe a conversation to be had about wealthier communities having the resources to push away the problem, whereas less well-to-do communities don't have that resources. Or like Everett, like there's no world where Everett's able to say like this isn't welcome here anymore. They really have no choice but to embrace the problem.
That is not totally true.
Okay.
Because and those what I'm saying is not true is that like there was a time where Everett was like trying to embrace the problem, but now they're
Mhm.
getting to the point where they're rejecting it, right? And
Oh,
the necessary affluence of a community doesn't always translate to the government's ability to address an issue, right? And I'll give you an example, Mukilteo here, right?
yeah.
Like we do have fairly large property values, relatively high sales tax and taxes, good area median income, if you will. But we try to keep our services within the city manageable, right? So that one, it doesn't cost more to do more, and two, because we don't have necessarily the same issues as at Everett, right? So like, you know, that actually, if anything, a community's affluence uh, does not lend to there being necessarily resources to address that. It's a community's density that does that, right? Because like when you have more people in an area, right, then you have to address more types of issues, right? And I mean, I don't know the yearly revenue between Mukilteo and Everett, but because Everett has like, oh my God, like 100,000, I don't
So many
remember.
people.
It's
I thought
more than what
Everett's
we have.
closer to 250.
Okay, it is. So it's a lot, right?
Mhm.
We have 23,000, right? And so despite the fact that we are relatively affluent, like we're not taking in as much tax dollars because we don't have as many people, right?
Mhm.
And so that's why I was saying kind of
Yeah.
sort of, but not really, because there's those factors that um yeah, that actually take effect.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, thinking about that, the density really does matter. I mean, if you're a really, affluent community that's very dense, you're going to have
Yeah.
different issues than an affluent community that's less dense,
That's right.
just because of your population and the needs of that population. So yeah, that does make sense.
That's right. But also like the political will. That's another
Mhm.
factor, right? Because like you can have an affluent community that's dense in a very conservative area and people are going to be like, you're going to jail, right? If
Yeah.
you're sleeping, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
so that's another factor, right? Is like the political climate or the political will of a community, right? There's a lot to that. Yeah, there's definitely a lot to that. Yeah, yeah.
Well, quick correction. 250 was way off. I don't know why that popped in my mind. 111,000.
Oh,
Okay. I
okay.
thought it was around 100 something, but
Yeah.
that nonetheless, it's like significantly more than Mukilteo. So it's
Yeah,
like,
for
Yeah.
sure.
You
Yeah.
said it so
and
confidently too. I was like, for sure,
Yeah,
he knows
it
clearly.
I was looking into moving into Missoula, Montana, and I remember the population was very similar to Everett,
okay,
and
right.
so it was much higher than I thought it was, and I
I
just
think
thought, well, I was
Snohomish
way off.
County is around 250.
That's probably what it
Hmm.
was.
Um,
Yeah.
I, I think we're in the millions, to be honest. I don't know.
In Snohomish County? Let's
Yeah,
look it
don't
up.
somebody look it up. I'm not looking it up right now. Like, you don't have to be specific unless that's what you guys want to do. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to know, Lewis. We talked about you were raised in Marysville, as were we all. So what led you down this path of public service, and what's happened to you to help to push you into these service roles?
yeah, that's a good question. Well, I almost died at one point. Yeah. I was yeah, it's crazy because looking back, our graduation year, which was '06, right? Graduated 666. It's the blessed
That's
it's
the
the
lucky
Yeah,
blessed
number, right?
generation.
that's not bad luck or
I know,
anything.
right? The blessed generation. No, yeah. So, but later that year, like after that summer, I got into a car accident that fractured my spinal cord and left me paralyzed, right? And so, like, um, growing up in Marysville, like I really associated who I was based on what people around me were telling me I was, right? Or what the media was telling me I was. And as a black man who was at the time closeted and gay, like I was, I didn't have opportunity or, I was supposed to be a rapper or supposed to like, be good at sports or, there was never a focus on like people like me achieving and like making things per se. You know what I'm saying? And
Hmm.
so because of that, it contributed to just like some internal oppression and internal issues with like what my identity was, right? And I remedied that through like drugs and alcohol and being a hoodlum, right? And so I was on this trajectory that probably would have left me dead, if I didn't get into the car accident I got into, right? Which fractured my spinal cord and was my kind of divine intervention saying, like, you have to change your life, otherwise this could have been worse, right? And so I took that and ran with it. And, that led me on like a spiritual path and, obviously a path of learning and luckily I had good friends and like good family that was supportive, but I was able to bounce back in a way that gave me clarity about the fragility of life, right? And so it's like, so I had to say, one, I want to be true to myself, and two, I have to use my abilities or my skills to help others, right? Because I've always been a humanist person, somebody who cares about other people and wants to help people. Um, yeah, that just kind of led me to the path of education that I took that inevitably helps people and that led me to seeing the world a little different and seeing myself a little different and me being the rebel person I am, I was like let me run with this and try to change the world a little bit. So
I really appreciate your demeanor, Lewis. I feel like that's the best way to get things done is to be able to communicate clearly and with compassion. Has that served you well?
oh my God, yeah, yes, 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 absolutely. Like if like any youth I tell, like all you have to do is know how to navigate people to be successful. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
you just literally have to know how to navigate people, right? Because the person's going to be the difference between you being able to access something or not access something. And if you don't know how to, navigate a person or navigate people, you're never going to get anywhere. Like literally. Um,
Well, and that's tricky, right? Because a lot of children that are growing up low income or in these systems, they don't get to learn those skills.
That's right. That's right. And yeah, they're too, focused on like being hungry or like
Surviving, yeah.
surviving. Yes, exactly. And they don't get those like some people consider them soft skills, but like I think that they're essential skills. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Like don't minimize that. Being able to communicate with somebody, receive somebody, and then reciprocate somebody, that's like that's the nectar of like human life and like proliferation that we don't have as a priority in just being human, right? Like, I mean, even at the adult level, you know what I mean? Like, that's not necessarily a priority, right? Our priority is making ends meet so that we can live in whatever semblance of a life that we want to carve out for ourselves, right? And that creates a lot of like competition and like I'm gonna harm you so that I can live the life that I want to live. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it is
It's
a
very anti-empathetical, it's me first. Let me take care of me first. And I'm
yeah.
totally all for the put the oxygen mask on yourself, like, but
Yeah,
not to the detriment of the people around you. Don't then hoard the oxygen machine and go
that
hide in the
part.
closet.
That part. That's it. That's right,
Yeah.
right? Like you still have to allow other people around you to live and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot to it. And it's really difficult if you don't have the leadership that sees it that way.
Mm.
right? You can have leadership that gets some of like, and I think that's been the issue is like we've had leaders who have focused on certain issues and like address certain things and put their energy and their time into addressing these things and they might address it, but it goes back to what I said earlier, right? They don't have the experience, the expertise, the time or the money to really do that, then they will create holes, right? I was thinking about Bill Clinton and the three strikes law as an example, right? Like, that just created like widespread criminality for low-level offenses that like incarcerated people forever, and broke homes up and like destroyed entire communities because of, policing bias and all these other things. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, yeah, it's so important for leadership to be good at what they do. And that is there is a deficit of that today. I'm gonna be honest
And
with
to
you.
have perspective, right? I mean, if we have a bunch of old white people, sorry, bunch of old white men making laws from their singular perspective, they're missing out on everyone else's experience. It's very much like, so Derek and I, a few weeks ago, we went and saw this documentary called Beyond the Bridge, A Solution to Homelessness. And it is so, so good. It just showed in Seattle this last week. But the housing first model is very much central to this message in this film. And one of the things that they talked about is one of, a really important part of creating solutions to homelessness is to get the buy-in from all of the different people, including the people experiencing homelessness, because they're the ones who can give you that firsthand experience, right? And then being willing and able to listen to that and say, well, that's not my experience, but I hear you and that's valid. So let's incorporate some of what you're saying, you know?
It's the incorporation of that, right? Like, yeah, I mean, I've been in like strategic planning meetings or I've seen, community engagement efforts where we got that information from the lived experience of people, but the people at the top and the decision makers didn't see that that's the way it needed to
Mm.
go. And so they went with the way they either felt comfortable with or they thought we should go. And, there's plenty of examples where that, missed the mark, right?
Mm.
But you're right, and it's not a when you say, we got a bunch of old white men doing this, like making these decisions, that's not a blanket statement against white men.
No.
It's it's a blanket statement against what boomer white men who don't know what the no, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
A
But
sing
like
a
I'm
singular
kidding.
a
I'm kidding.
singular perspective, you
Yes, and
know?
Yes.
that's my point.
Yes.
That's my point. And so it's like, so it's not like, so you have to, you have to be clear about the playing field, right? And like, and if you are coming from a place of like, I need it to be this way for me and people like me,
Mm.
now you got disparity. Now
Yeah.
you got
Well,
inequity.
it's
You know what
it's
I
got
mean?
to be a
So
collaborative effort, and that's the focus
yes,
of the Housing First model. And I'm still learning more about it, but they are key on everybody is driving the same direction. It's
yes.
Chamber of Commerce, it's mayors, it's police force, it's everybody collaborating together and knowing what that mission is and driving in the same direction.
Yeah, no, and I mean, that's an excellent point, right? Because, and you said the Chamber of Commerce, and what that says is like there's the public sector, right?
Hmm.
There's the
Local
nonprofit sector,
businesses.
and then there's the private sector, right? And if like all of them have a role to play, you know what I mean? Whether it's the businesses on Front Street who have homeless people under their awnings and or cook the food that goes to the nonprofit that gets to the homeless person or the policy in the government that allows or disallows somebody to even sleep on the street, like if all of those efforts aren't aligned, then you're going to have a system that's not working and it's almost working against the solution, right?
Right.
And
Hmm.
I believe that's like what's happening, at least partly, you know what I mean? um, yeah. So yeah, leadership's important, inclusivity, having a broad perspective, all of those things are extremely important in all decision making as an
Yeah.
elected. So yeah.
Yeah, I find the DEI part of your work experience so interesting because it seems like you got to firsthand go into these organizations and places and like help them restructure and help them on an operational level. Um, implement DEI practices, which is more than just repairing some lost opportunities that people have experienced before, people who didn't get experiences before DEI became such a hot topic or more commonplace. It's giving people a chance at having opportunity, but it's also making sure that there's multiple perspectives represented at the table, right? And that
Yeah.
might even be, as far as evolution goes, the more important part of it. It's not just repairing some of the past, but it's correcting it and making sure that we don't repeat those mistakes going forward.
Oh,
Um,
sister, you said it. The evolution part, it's that. It is really that, right? And I don't think as a species, and I always go to the species level because includes everybody, right? Like when you talk about like the fundamental natural processes, like I don't even care what you believe, like things change, period. Right? Like from who I was back then to who I am now,
Hmm.
that's called change. It's called
Yeah. And it
evolution,
should
right?
happen,
And
right?
it
If you're the
should.
same person you were in high school, we've got a problem.
This I'm saying, but no, but it's so important though because if you aren't moving forward in a way that includes these ideas or mitigates the gaps in solutions with different types of communities, including like the majority community or whatever, like then you get social incongruency and you get friction and and it causes pushback, and that's exactly what we're seeing today is pushback to what happened. And so for instance, like part of DEI was like, okay, we have to understand the disparities. Okay, there's disparities in Black home ownership, right? And that leads to, generational poverty, right? Because they can't build equity, they can't pass down property, they can't all sorts of stuff, right? And so, okay, in this short amount of time, we got to fix that solution, right? We have to fix that problem. Okay, so maybe we should dedicate funding to Black people so that they can buy homes, right? But when you do that, like you got a bunch of other people who are like, what about me? Right? And
Right.
like that's not fair, right?
Right.
And then that creates the social pushback, right? And it's like, oh, okay, so these people are, get all this privilege and da 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 da. And like it just creates this icky social situation that we're currently in.
Mhm.
This is where we're at, right? And um it's because it wasn't clear to people why that was happening, or
Hmm.
there wasn't a complementary program to address disparities in other communities, or there wasn't, there, like that's what I think of is that like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's difficult to solve these things in a short amount of time, right? Like we
Sure.
can like put a policy in place and like a solution in place that is like incremental and is not going to address the acute disparity right now. But like if you're not educating people as to why that is and what it's going to take to get to a place, then you're leaving people in the dark. And when people are in the dark, they're going to try to find a way out, even if it's making up their own assumptions or
Mm.
listening to somebody who's just saying something that seems to resonate with them without the context of what's really happening. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like
Yes.
it just creates everything that we're in right now.
And
So,
and I think also there's this, there's a sect of people who look for someone to blame. And
oh yeah,
fortunately, right, like we're living in a world right now where, the systems that are happening around us are contributing to all of this.
that's right.
It's like if there was enough houses for everyone to have a house, there was enough homes where, you know, let's say
Yes.
let's say I'm let's say I'm applying for a home, right? And
Mhm.
so is an African American family, and there's a system in place that we've implemented where we make about the same money, they get priority because
Right.
that's
That's
right.
right.
And if there were 100 other houses that I could apply for, that probably wouldn't affect me in the same way,
That is
you
right.
know?
That is so right. For the people in the back, if you didn't hear that, right? Like, yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's
so we're
absolutely right.
we're all fighting over these resources. And so I think, ultimately creating systems where people all, we all have a shot. We don't have to fight each other. There's enough, we're abundant. Like that would be a great thing, right?
well,
Yeah,
we
it
could
seems. very pipe dreamy though right
It
now,
does, but that's the world
unfortunately.
I live in, man. There's a pipe dream going on here all the
Which,
time.
like, people like you need to continue to do the work you're doing, right? Because the spread of ideas and these and the information and these thoughts, like they matter on an energetic level, in my opinion,
Mm,
right? And in
yes.
my belief. But yeah, there's also a capitalistic aspect to that
Mm.
we haven't talked about totally, but it's like that's the big elephant that nobody's really talking about, right? That's the thing that's driving all of the division is this system of competition and scarcity mindset of resources because there's a few people out there who have the resources that should be with everybody else. You know what I'm saying? And we're talking about mass income inequality,
Hmm.
right? Like, yeah, I'm gonna chill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we're on the same page. I'm sorry. Nobody needs to be making $10 billion a year. I don't know
Right,
what you would need that for.
right.
My partner, his mother is looking for a house right now, and obviously she's on the lower budget, and because she's a regular person, so she doesn't have millions of dollars to buy a house, which the market's pretty crazy right now, and so the lower your budget is, obviously, clearly, the more competitive it gets. It gets very competitive, so you really have to jump on a home. And we went and with her to meet with Um, her real estate person and then like a real estate advisor. And I asked them, are there any protections for people who are buying their only home? They're trying to get into their first home or the only home. Like she's currently renting. This will be her home that she plans on living in. She's 67. And then there's going to be people who are buying their sixth home. And are there any protection for these people who are just trying to be a homeowner for themselves, their families, raise a family in, or live out the rest of their life in? And it was like almost laughable, like, no, oh no, like everyone's equally competing. And,
It's
and
not.
if we could say maybe there's a minority for that, whatever that means in that county, like minorities get first right at a house that's equally, like you were just the example you just gave. If you were looking for a home and then there was a family who is also looking for a home and they get first rights to it, but there's enough, so you move on. I feel like there should also be a bracket of like a pricing bracket where we're protected up until a certain point. If we want to compete at the $1.5 million level homes, or we want to compete at the $5 million homes, okay, then we're competing with, whatever. It opens up more. But it does. Wouldn't it be nice if under like 750, like we got, just
Yeah.
average people trying to buy their only home got first rights to it.
Here's
Preferential.
here's the unseen about that. Not everywhere is equal in terms of pricing,
Sure.
right? Like 750 here versus 750 in like Kansas, like
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
different,
Oh yeah,
right?
I mean,
Right,
of
but that
course it
So
goes
would have
different.
to be adaptable, right?
that goes
Where you
back
are.
to
But I love that.
tailoring them to each city and to each, district. It's like, what
Yeah,
is the medium in this district and what makes sense here?
Yeah.
yeah, and I no, and Sam like love that idea. Like let's actually do that. Like I'm here for it. That's part of the reason why I'm in service and why I wanted to get into politics to do those kind of things, right? But like with the confusion and the difference between what we're talking about nationally and how that translates on the local level,
Mm.
like that contributes to people with misinformation about what's really happening. You know what I mean? And they are applying what's happening in the news in Washington, D.C. with what's happening in rural America. And it's like they're not the same in any
No.
shape, form, or fashion. And so you have this like this collective consciousness or this mental confusion between the differences of what's happening over there and what's happening here. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Mhm.
And the other bit of that is you're right about like that's one of the issues is like you have like several homes that are being purchased by people who don't even live in the United States, right?
Yeah.
And like that contributes to the negative outlook of people who aren't from here, right? And, if you have a family member who's pushed out, but you have a neighbor who is, out of this country as a visa member, like, why can't my person live here? Like, that contributes to this, like, broad social consciousness that is so toxic these days and so misinformed these days that, like policies like what you were saying can't even take root. You know what I'm saying? I love that idea. Like, and I'm like, let's make it happen. Also, we need to have several changes of leadership to make sure something like this happens. You know what I mean?
Right.
Several,
Yeah,
several.
and buy-in from the communities,
That's right.
One of the quotes that we got from that documentary I referenced was, if you don't want affordable housing in your front yard, you're going to have homelessness in your backyard. And
Excellent.
they reference that over and over again. We have to, as a community, get used to the idea of low-income housing being in our communities and integrating people so that they can be part of society, and
Mm,
that's a bigger conversation. That's definitely a harder conversation. But I
yeah,
think we have a housing shortage. I mean, I think it's just
100%.
pretty obvious about that. So if we just, sometimes I just think we make things too complicated. We
Oh
just
yeah.
need more houses like that people can afford.
I saw that somebody actually took a toll of all of the vacancies across America and which,
Mm,
it is hard to put a number on the
Mhm.
amount of people who are unsheltered. That's really hard to pin down, but that
yeah.
there are plenty of vacancies, actually. There are plenty of houses. There aren't enough accessible houses. Like
Sure.
there's not enough. I mean, and this was her argument. There's just not enough yeah, it's hard to access homes. It's hard to buy homes because of the competition we're talking about that comes from overseas, or just that we're competing with, developers. We're competing with people
Yeah.
who just can pay cash, and even on a rental, like even on a level of renting a home and getting people into homes that way. Still, it's just that it's not as easily accessible as it could be or should be. And with Airbnb and people like, oh, I see a way to make
It's a
money off of this
commodity.
property instead of having a family live there and dwell there for
Yes.
12 months. I make so much more money if I just turn it over every weekend. So
Okay. The hidden thing that you said that you didn't say is investors, right? The investor space, right? Like investors are the ones with the ton of money to be able to invest in a development, right? The issue with that in any investment is that, and it's not an issue if you're making the money, right? But but the issue is that like you have to have a return on your investment, right?
Mhm.
And you're not going to get a return on your investment if you're housing homeless people or low income people, right?
right.
And you're having to have your multifamily housing below market rate to accommodate the social need. Like I just invested, millions of dollars to get this developed. Like that's not gonna benefit me as an investor. You know what I
But
mean? So you have this
but
like,
it can. That's the funny part because a lot of
yeah.
people are investing because they can tap into the state's money where they will pay the rent for these low income people. So it's guaranteed money. It's actually easier rent to collect in some cases, but I think that
Um,
needs to be more of the norm.
Yeah, I love your optimism there. The issue is that it's not easy, right? If you look at the HUD system, right, the Section 8 system,
Mhm.
Hmm.
right? Well, and here's another compounding factor to that, right? Like one, getting your money from the government is never easy. And if you're an investor or you're like a business-minded person, you don't want to deal with the government at all, right? Like straight up. Like
Mhm.
ask any business person, they will say, lower my taxes so I can make more money. Like, I don't want to deal with the government. You can talk to any business, and that's what they will say, right?
Mhm.
That's a social perspective. That's a social perspective that exists in our collective conscious, right? The other issue is that the truth and the social stigma with people in poverty is that they're messy and they're not going to take care of the home and they don't, you know what I mean? So like if you're going to invest in a property that you expect to, not have a bunch of expenses on fixing holes in the wall or, redoing the carpets because people don't know how to clean or, like you're not supposed to flush all of your coffee grounds down the sink. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
so many compounding factors as to
Sure.
why
Thank you for
investors are
Yeah.
saying it.
like,
I feel like nobody knows that you're not supposed to flush your compounds, your coffee grounds down the sink. I tell everybody I live with, you're not supposed to.
Okay, how
I'm
about
It's
saying,
not
She did
sanity
garbage
catch me doing
disposal?
studies.
that once, and she
I'm,
straight up was like, no. I
I'm
was
Like
like, I
five days
didn't
saying
know.
ago.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
that
How
will
about
ruin
eggshells?
pipes, you
Eggshells
know?
with the garbage disposal. That's not common knowledge either.
Right. But that's like I mean that's where it's like so compounding, right?
Yeah.
It's like
No,
even if
I
you
hear
have
you.
yeah,
But at the same point, it's a little unfair to make assumptions that they will just not take care of the property either.
sure.
I've been in plenty of houses from people that make great money that they do not take care of things.
Right.
But I feel like that's at least a step in the right direction
Well,
if
and
Yeah,
we can make that easier.
yeah,
I
it sounds like
agree. 100%.
getting the right type of people to make these investments. I mean, we know that as things are changing, people are voting with their dollar more. Companies are trying to be more
Yeah.
ethical, and they're seeing, more support for their companies if they're making these bigger changes in the world using their own money. So maybe having private investors who will invest in these affordable
Yeah.
houses.
Yep.
And then, they're getting the support from the community of saying, this is how we're going to help solve this problem. Are we going to make a bunch of money on it? No, but it's not for
Right.
that. It's for our brand. It's for trying to, further the social justice in the world. And we as a multi-billion-dollar company can do that. And we know that people will support our brand more because we're doing that. So it may just be trying to target the right types of investors.
Oh my God, yeah. Um, but then there's the trouble with the commons again, right?
Yeah.
Because if the resource of good-hearted people who are willing to invest large sums of money to address these social issues, the issues are so widespread. I mean, that number of people who are willing to do that is not as widespread, right?
Right.
So it's like I agree. And the only reason I'm being so pushbacky with you all is
Oh,
because
no, it's
I am
good.
I am jaded. Y'all need to
Yeah.
understand. I am so jaded. I entered into politics and social justice with this rosy perspective. Like we just need to help people in these ways. But I found that like the reality is like it is not simple. And there are like compounding factors. There's history at play, right? Like there's social perspective at play that prevents even people wanting to do stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So like
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that there needs to be a fundamental change in people for these policies and these ideas to really take root, right?
Hmm.
But you have to communicate that in a way that is one abundantly clear and can be received by all people, but two actually gives people like meaningful ways to do that. And that is so difficult. If you know the psychological field or like therapy, like to get somebody to see their values so that they don't like have maladaptive behaviors, like that process can take years. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like I'm living for it. Like that's what my mission is in life is to do these things. But I'm not gonna let smart people like you go on thinking that it's that easy because it
Mm.
Yeah.
there's so
Oh
much
yeah.
more complex
Oh
than
yeah.
that.
We're under
So much
no
more
illusion that it's easy.
It's
complex.
I do
not.
want to ask you, do you have any success stories of as understanding that most of these things just take long and drawn out periods of time to enact change? Do you have any success stories of here's something that we all came together on, worked on, and it happened more quickly than we would have
Yeah,
thought?
throw some more optimism back at us. We gotta.
I'm jaded, y'all. I'm sorry. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I have seen the needle move on diversity, equity, and inclusion significantly in the last 10 years. Significantly. At the local level, at the state level, as a part of coalitions. The home, I mentioned like, loans for Black folks to get homes, right? Like that was the policy and the funding of that took years, right? And a lot of it started with the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Like DEI came out of Black Lives Matter. It came out of, seeing the disparities and, the police brutality against Black people. People started to say, okay, why is this happening? What are the statistics? And they started to see that like there's a lot of contributing factors as to why these things are happening, right? Um, and once that happens, uh, luckily, like, and I hate saying luckily, it's like there was a social catalyst to change people's minds and hearts. That's what happened, right?
Yeah.
And that allowed the space and the political will to create these progressive policies and to incorporate diversity, equity, inclusion, and to make people want to have it in their business and want to, do board trainings on diversity, equity, and inclusion and like have policies and like engage in community and do all these things to really get to the heart of an issue to address these social issues. But the issue with like that those social catalysts is they only go so far, right? It's like a flash in the pan is what some of my mentors would call it,
Uh,
right? It's like enough to get people to move and be outraged for a short period of time, but
yeah.
you're asking people to like undo the way they look at the world, right? And that takes time, right?
Yeah,
But
you're totally right. Because I remember after all of this stuff that happened, and it was just freaking horrific. I
yeah,
personally was like, how am I contributing to this problem? Even, and
yes.
I'm a nice white woman, but like, there must be some ways in which I can learn more, right? So I
Yeah.
read White Fragility,
Hmm.
blew my socks off. And I think that's what that is, right? It's you go through this surge of, okay, how can I alleviate my guilt for this period of time? So I feel like I'm part of the solution and not a part of the problem, right? But then you're right, as life goes
Hmm.
on, we all kind of sink back into our natural states, whatever they are. And so it takes
Yeah.
constant active effort to really make changes at like that foundational level of who
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah. And it's really difficult to expect that of people.
Yeah.
So difficult, right? Um, it not only is it difficult to expect that of people, but it's tiring, right? Like even people who like help to spur this work, like I'm tired.
Mm.
That's why I'm partially jaded. Like, because having the community meetings, meeting with elected officials to talk about this, like hearing these stories of trauma that people are experiencing, like it wears on you as a person. You know what I'm saying? And it's like it's really difficult to sustain, which is why I'm a big advocate for like, yes, fill your cup, take care of yourself, do what you need to, right? Because we need you to be strong to be able to do this because and mind you, there's no playbook to do this, right? But getting back to the to what you were asking, Derek, of like an example. So yeah, there's like a Black Home Covenant funding or something that is funding historical Black families in I think it's all of Washington or maybe some metropolitan areas in Washington to have access to like different rates of home loans, right? Um, and that started with this outrage, seeing the statistics of disparity, and then community having those conversations to willing participants who had seen all this stuff and like, we got to do something, right, Carsey? You had to do something, right? And that's how policy changed. That's how that program came to be, right? And so that's one example, right?
That's
There's,
great.
I mean, another example would be like schools is coming to my mind. I want to say discipline rates almost. Um, but like there were, and I don't know the specifics, but there are state policies now that prevent teachers from like some disciplinary courses of action, right? Which is a response to the school to prison pipeline, which disproportionately affects people of color, right? And so you create this like wide swath policy after community advocates and like receptive policymakers and all that stuff, right? Now you have this like law on the books that enables kids to do whatever the hell they want. And so it's like oh, there are lots of examples of that. And I could probably go through several other ones. I'm happy to do that, but it's just one of those things where it's like, there's no easy answer. It takes sustained effort, it takes sustained will. And that's not realistic. I'm like it has to ebb and flow. You know what I mean? There's
Mhm.
an ebb and flow in life, right? There's always an ebb and flow in life, and I think we as a species need to like better understand that and spend more time like incorporating that reality of how we work and how things are into how we treat each other and how our systems work so that we can mitigate the issues that we've seen through history.
Well, it seems like a lot of this should really happen at the school level because it's a lot easier to mold minds than to undo decades of living a certain way with,
My
you know,
brother.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're right. You're absolutely right. And that's a lot of where, while that is true, that is absolutely true, and I maintain that, like education, if I were to be president, education would be number one for me, right? Despite the desire for the capitalist society to underfund education and just create workers who, you know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
this, like I'm saying, right? Um,
And run schools just as efficiently as they can and cut all the programs that actually help nurture children and teach them to be
yes.
critical thinkers, right?
100%, 100%, right? You're right. But like the so you all have heard the I don't want to like conservative liberal, but like the conservative push against like LGBTQ or critical race theory in schools, right?
Sure.
The reason why that push exists is because the reality is children need to be protected, right? As a species, like your offspring are what continue the species and should be protected and not harmed in, their upbringing and stuff, right? But then you have people who think that this is harmful to my kids, so I don't want that to happen. And then you get enough of those voices together, and then you got policy that's pushed back, right? Like,
Mm.
but you also have, in some cases, like you have educators who are not addressing it the way it needs to be addressed. Like I've seen like DEI related classes and like critical race theory like lessons that are being taught by educators that are not doing what they need to protect white students, right? Or they're not doing what they need to create a salient understanding of history that doesn't harm students. You know what I'm saying? And it's like there is a scalpel method that you have to do with students to be able to do that successfully and not harm them. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I don't think that that level of precision was implemented in those efforts, which is why
Mm-hmm.
the pushback happened. And so,
Sure.
yeah, I believe education is where a lot of this starts. Um, that doesn't mean that adults don't have a role to play, right?
Oh yeah.
Because they
Well, I'm just saying that taking the path of least resistance, it's a lot easier to start fresh rather than undo. But what do you think would be effective? What's the most effective way to change minds of people who are very set in their ways?
Ooh.
trauma.
Like inflict trauma on them.
So, so psychologically, the best way to change somebody is to create a salient experience that creates behavior that changes.
Wow.
Sure.
Like what we typically call um, rock bottom.
Yeah,
People hit rock
exactly.
Mm,
bottom and then they make a change.
they
Well,
have
with your
that
100%.
personal
internal
story, Lewis.
motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally. That's the quick and easy way, right?
Sure.
Um, the other way is everything around them has to enforce a certain path, right?
Hmm.
I mean, yeah. There and salient, and I don't want to say trauma like, we have to harm people for people to change per se, right?
Hmm.
But if we live in a world where people don't even know what's what or have the discernment about what's like correct information or what's not,
Mm.
like it might take something like that to change people and wake them up. You know what I'm saying? Right?
Sure.
COVID technically was supposed to be that. COVID
Hmm.
was, right? COVID was supposed to be the way we interact with each other, the way we value what we need to survive. Like that was the in my opinion, the universe saying like this is your check moment. This is the trauma that you need to say that,
Mm.
oh, some of these things need to change, right? At least that's my belief, right? And while we did what we did to adapt to that, right? Adaptation's a part of evolution, by the way, right? What we did to adapt to that, you had a sect of people misinformed push back to the degree that it catalyzed a candidate that is, I mean, C said today, right? C said like news media today. That's what happened. That's literally what happened. So it's like there's I believe that there needs to be like a Jesus like a moment, right? Like there needs to be that leader that people are like, okay, this is that person, right? This is somebody who who gets it and like who's that pro like that's what will change what happening. That's it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like I think
Yeah.
we're too far gone in terms of like our dynamics of like opposition and resistance. They're so set in that I don't even know if a Jesus person could change those things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's
well,
Yeah. Well,
so
sorry, go
crazy.
ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it's interesting because I know that the purpose of your podcast was to, and is to, because it's still going, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Is to create this space of conversation between people who maybe think differently politically.
that's right.
Um, and so, yes, I am very rose-colored glasses about the whole thing, and I think that spaces, for creating spaces where people who are very different can have a safe, comfortable conversation where
That's
they
right.
don't feel defensive, or if they do feel defensive, they're encouraged to move through that, in a safe
Yes,
way that feels
yes,
constructive. And more spaces, I think, like that are being created, at least in my view. And of course, we all live in our own worlds. Um, but do you feel like stuff like that can be helpful? I mean,
100%.
especially, yeah, doing what you do.
100%. Yes, that's literally why I made the podcast the way I
Hmm.
did, which is called Record in Progress. It is still going. I'm working on my website right now, and I have some ideas for the next step of it. I just need the time. But yes, no, that's exactly why I created it that way, is because the siloing that we do in our echo chambers is harmful to society as a
Mm-hmm.
whole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like just like even having the ability to like go to an event by yourself or meet people by yourself and like feel safe, right? Like that's uh I mean, does that really exist in all the places? No, it doesn't, right? But it should, right? We should have I don't know. I mean I do know there's a lot of layers to it, but yes, having inclusive spaces that are safe, right? Insert progressive liberal words here that are completely like, dismissed now in some circles, right? But having inclusive and safe spaces for people to just be themselves, curious and able to engage, that is like that's that nectar of humanity that we need to tap into because the opposite of that is harming us as a species. Like C said wars happening. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Jesus.
Yeah. Your point on COVID got my mind thinking about how that could have been that coming together moment of, regardless of whatever political views you have, whatever wherever you come from, this is everybody's going through the same thing. So it had the opportunity to be very unifying, and it seems like it just pushed people to isolation and more of a combative
Yeah.
situation.
Well, and
Yeah.
going back to ebbs and flows, like there were moments. So we all did COVID in a different area. I was in LA. Where were you
Um,
guys when COVID happened?
I was in Washington.
You were
yeah,
in
I'm
I was
Washington?
in Seattle.
Okay. So these big cities, right? They seem to be dealing with COVID in a very different way than some of these smaller cities were dealing with it, and rightfully so. There's more people. There's more fallout from things like this in big cities. But like in LA, it was taken very seriously. Like
yeah.
we did not play around. We wiped our groceries down. We did all the things, and there was a period of time where we did feel very like in community with other people. We're
Yes.
all dealing for the first, like, I would say even like 2 or 3 months. I remember all of us calling up and checking up on our friends, creating new ways to hang out virtually that felt really interesting. And when we thought that COVID was like a novelty, a fluke, it was only going to be a couple months and then we were going to come, get it back. And then, 8 months in, we're like, we're still here. It just, I think naturally we all just were like, is this done yet? Like, can we like, we want to integrate these changes. I think a lot of people like work from home became a really popular thing, which I think is so good for the world for people to realize we can work from home and be productive and not waste gas and not have to do the thing. We don't always have to ground ourselves into the dirt to make a living. We can also make it work around us. But then, I know I've talked to a lot of people who they were working from home for the last couple years, and now their companies want them to go back into the office. And so that's what I think that's what you're talking about. Like it could have been done in a way that was just so transformative. It was that trauma that we had to go through to be like, this isn't the way. This isn't working. We need this is our opportunity for a reset. And for a minute there, I really thought we were going to take it, and I was really excited about what it could mean for the world. Um,
You're 100% right. And and I don't want to discredit, right? Because a lot of things did change. Work from
mhm.
home is more readily available now. Some people understand, some people still cover their mouth when they cough. I've seen
Mhm.
too many people not do that. And I'm like, we just went through COVID like
Yeah.
2, 3 years ago. Please cover your mouth, please.
Also,
But
I just don't want your germs.
yeah,
We all
right.
learned a lot about germs during
Yeah.
We
COVID.
did, right? But rightfully
Yeah.
so, because all it takes is, some, prehistoric, virus that's melting from the glacier, the polar ice caps melting,
I've
release.
watched so many
You know what
thriller horror movies about that. It's so
I,
fun.
I know, I love it. I love it. It's my favorite, but it's one of my favorites. I mean, but that's not a far off reality in the world we live in. I mean, it's literally
Hmm.
happened. You know what I mean? And it's just Um, yeah, it's I think what I've learned, and part of the reason why I say I'm jaded, I'm jaded to the degree that like I'm not gonna get my hopes up in a way that disillusions me from the reality.
Sure.
That's what I mean. But I will always be an eternal optimist. I will always be somebody who believes in the power of the individual and us collectively to overcome anything. Like 100%. Like there's not a ounce of my body that doesn't believe that. I just know where we're at right now. And it's like we need
Yeah.
something. We need, help. We need leadership. You know what I mean? And if we had different leadership during that time, maybe it could have come out different. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm. I
Well, it
think
clearly hasn't
Sometimes,
stopped you from getting your feet dirty.
yeah.
You're
right.
in the thick of
Yeah.
it. You're working. You're an inspiration.
Oh, thank you. You
I
all
think
are.
one thing I'm taking away too from what you're saying is like it's all happening at once. Like really good things are happening and really bad things are happening. It's not like the pendulum isn't just swinging. There's also those, there's also the balls in between that are kind of just sitting there taking the brunt of it, watching it go this way and then watching that one go that way. And I think
Yeah.
that, with COVID, I think a lot of good things did come out of it. I think it did shake up. I think
Mhm.
it did make people give people time and I think there was this collective, like, let's stop and think about our choices and let's stop and think about why we do things the way we do things. And I think that is working still in the background. But I think the dark side of the moon and the light side of the moon, they interchange like what is on center stage. And I feel like it did kind of open up good things are happening, but the current administration and the pushback from conservative Republicans and big money business owners is kind of on center stage right now. And I do think that it's possible to be an optimist and still acknowledge that that is what is on center stage at the moment. But we don't always need to be in the audience only focused on center stage. Like we can kind of look to the back
Yes.
of the room and see what else is going on and see what else people are doing in the back of the room and kind
Yes.
of hope that that will take center stage in the next pendulum swing.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Thank you for creating that very dynamic landscape of like perception. You know what I mean? Because you're absolutely right. Which is part of the reason why I think that there's such widespread distrust of the media, right? Because the media is what is the center stage in a lot of ways, right?
Right.
And while there's information and spinning and bias and all this stuff, right, in this imperfect system, like people who are very resistant to media, they have some legitimacy, right? Because, it's not being conveyed truthfully. Like
Mhm.
there's missing gaps. That's not necessarily true. That's, a spin, right? Um, and I don't think people have like the regular individual, the person who is not, some social theorist. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Uh, like there's no way for people to have that perspective without the device that we is feeding us information or the TV show that's feeding. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
God, and
Well,
it's
it's
so
tough
not
to
fair
have
to
the
those people.
awareness when you're limiting yourself to one news media outlet, or you're not getting out into communities that look at things differently than you.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And man, it like for instance, like when part of my effort to like include different voices like in my podcast, Record in Progress, but just kidding, is that is
Hey, throw
that
out those plugs, man.
is that like I needed to get my media from different sources. And so like I looked into one of my conservative friends told me about like Ground News, which is like a media aggregator that actually shows the spin of a story. And it actually puts in my news feed conservative stories and stuff that I wouldn't otherwise get because we're all in an algorithm based world. Don't get me started there.
Mm.
But yeah, but I wouldn't have known about that aggregator until somebody told me about it. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
I'm an informed
Right.
person, and it's
Sure.
like there's so many people who don't have, diverse perspectives telling them, "Oh, you should look at it this way." You know what I mean?
Right.
Or you should see this source. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's not healthy to surround yourself completely with like-minded people.
Yeah.
Need some
Yeah.
variety, need some new perspectives.
I think so, but there's a lot of people who don't agree
So
with
what
that.
do you, I mean, if we were going to give our listeners one little, piece of advice to walk away with today, right? There was a lot here for us to unpack. Thank you for all that. What is one thing that you suggest people do to be able to see bigger than their own perspective?
Oh God. That is a great question. To see beyond their own perspective. God, that is such a good question. Um, one of the things I want to say is like like have truth be your guide, right? But it's so difficult to say that because like what is the truth? You know what I mean? Like that is so relative these days. It's crazy. I know what truth is because like I've done the work to like be able to discern and all this stuff, but like it's unfair to ask people to be able to do that, right? It's really unfair for people to ask people to do that. But if I were to say to take away from this conversation some way to get out of your bubble and do the thing, um, be comfortable with uncomfort. Yeah, that's it. Be comfortable with discomfort. And I'm sure you've heard that before because it's very cliche in the DEI world. But the reason why that is important is because it is a critical thinking skill. It is a critical thinking skill and it's a foundational skill to navigate the world, right? If when you are, confronted with something that creates discomfort for you and you allow the like psychosomatic reaction to that to dictate your decision on how you're interacting with that, then you're missing out on a potential opportunity based on your perception of that as a threat or being other than, right? And so, but if you learn to say, okay, my reaction to this as being discomfort, like, and have the critical thinking skills to say, this is why I feel discomfort. It's because I don't see myself reflected in this, or I saw on a TV show, this is what happens when I'm in this situation, or I played a video game that says this, then if you don't have that critical thinking to know why you're feeling that way, and then have the understanding to choose different than that, then you will never be around something that's uncomfortable. And that will limit your ability to navigate the world and other people and opportunities. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, we're
100%.
very much made to feel like being uncomfortable is a bad thing. Like if
That's
you're
right.
uncomfortable, something's wrong.
That's right. That's right. And that's not the case. That's not truth. That's not the truth.
Not always. If somebody is following you to your car in a black hoodie, it is uncomfortable and you should do something about it. But
Oh,
like,
100%. And that's like that's why it's critical thinking because you have
yeah.
to know the difference between when that matters and when it doesn't, right? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not going to go to a bar where, people are I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to go to a
Yeah.
bar where, people are, wearing KKK hoods outside and stuff. Like, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't go there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
well,
even
A
that's
though
little
it's
too
like
much of a
uncomfortable.
stretch.
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? Like, I'm,
But that's it, the critical thinking skills. I mean, I
yeah,
think when we boil it all down, that's really such a great uh, indicator of where we need to start is thinking for yourself. And when you say, because we've had this conversation, when you say, I know what's true for me, it's because, and I don't want to speak for you, I'll speak for me, but
okay.
I think we can agree with this. We've taken some of the time to meditate and have that space to decide who am I and what do I believe. And when I hear something that doesn't feel true to me, I immediately can tell that doesn't feel true. Right. And I think a lot
Right.
of people are maybe less in their heart space and more in their head space. And they're like, no, if I reject what you're telling me, that means that my whole narrative is still true. But if I open
Mm,
myself up to what you're saying, that means all of these other things that I've founded my life on and my beliefs on, maybe those are also wrong. And that's really scary for people.
so right.
Well,
So
if you
absolutely.
start with moral compass. Do you have a moral compass and evaluate with that? Lead with your moral compass and then truth from there.
Yeah,
Your
I
turn,
love that.
Sam.
What you got, Tom?
Don't let your algorithm be your lens to the world. Because
Yes.
I
like
love
we
that.
have to go outside of our algorithms, and that's so hard because we spend more time on our phones than talking to other people in our day. And that's
Yes.
just the way the world is. So
Mhm.
um just stay privy to the fact that the algorithm is designed for you and it's feeding you a certain lens.
Tells you what you
Yeah.
want to hear.
Escape
It's
it
it,
if you
it's
can. Yeah.
that's right. It's feeding you comfort.
Yeah.
It's
Comfort and
literally feeding you
convenience.
comfort. Yes.
Toxic
Yeah.
comfort.
That
Toxic
Toxic
makes
comfort.
comfort.
toxic comfort. Oh, that's a good
The term, that's
one.
new social language to change
Ooh,
the world
toxic
with.
comfort.
Oh, I love
Toxic
that.
comfort.
I love
Lord have
that.
Yeah.
that's
Toxic
it.
comfort.
Love it. That's so great.
Comfort and convenience makes us good little consumers, you
Yes.
know?
Jeez, Lord.
That's a
Yes,
commercial
but
right there.
Toxic comfort, our new podcast.
yeah,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
stick with this one. This is a needed podcast, but toxic comfort, that is a social concept that people need to understand, right?
Mhm.
Um, because a lot of us are really comfortable with things that morally we're not aligned with just because it's in our community as the norm. Like there are good-hearted Christian people who are Donald Trump supporters who are seeing what he's doing and are appalled. You know what I mean?
Yes, you
And
bet.
it's like, and I hate to, mention the dude, but like, yeah, everything that all of what we said is exactly what people need, right? The moral compass, the discernment, the critical thinking, the get out of your algorithm. Like, please, anybody who's listening to this, take all of those things and implement them because you will be that much better of a person if you do it. I promise you. Promise you.
That.
Yeah.
Lewis, this has been an incredible interview.
Sorry. I'm
No,
still.
You're
it
pretty
was
great.
so good. It's
We're
been
fans.
so good. I can't thank you enough for all the work that you're doing. I know you mentioned being jaded, but I have a feeling that nothing is going to stop you from continuing to take steps forward and make change in your community. So thank you for being such a light and thank you for agreeing to enlighten our listeners on your experience as well.
Of course. I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate what you all are doing. Please keep it up. It is not easy, I will tell you. Right? And y'all notice it's work, but it's so needed. So we need these spaces where we're talking about these issues casually and realistically, right? And like, yeah, people need to be able to resonate with realness, right? And not like, some billionaire's perspective of what people should be doing. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah.
Well said.
All
All
right.
right, so
We
happy,
hope you
happy to
enjoy the rest of
Thank
your
you. It was so
Saturday.
nice to meet
Thanks,
you.
Lewis.
see you,
Yeah.
Sam. Bye, Derek. You
We'll
take
talk
Thank
care,
to
you,
you
brother.
later.
Lewis.
Bye.
Record in progress.
Yep, you got
Listen.
it. I'm gonna do a new
Check it out.
episode, I promise, before the end of the year. So, yes, I'll
All
talk to you all
right.
later, though.
Bye,
All
Lewis.
right.
All
Thanks,
right.
Lewis.
I'll see ya.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, let's unpack that. That was an awesome conversation. I just think Lewis is one of those people that I continually am so impressed with the people that have put themselves in the space to do all of this work. Like they see a need to fill and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna work on filling it,
Yeah. Yeah. And, like he said, and like so many people have told us, like it's not easy. It's emotionally draining and it's tiring work, but they persevere and they keep going and the benefit seems to outweigh it. And it's so inspiring. It's so inspiring. I think probably all of us, I'll speak for myself, have been like, how can I change my career path to get in on this work? Because despite everybody saying how tired they are, it just seems so rewarding and so fruitful, and so important, just so
Yeah.
important.
Well, and when you look back at history, you want to be able to say, I did something. I did something. I didn't, like we were saying, like I tried not to contribute to the problem. I tried to contribute to the solution, and the stories we're
Yeah.
going to tell our kids about how we handled all of this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got a lot of experience even within the different cities in Washington between Marysville, Everett, Mukilteo. I think he been in Seattle a little bit, or at least has some awareness of it. I think that alone gives him a lot of perspective how each city differs. I
Hmm.
thought that was very interesting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, just such a good piece of advice too that he really like implemented in me, just that like it's all happening at once, like we can have these programs and they sound great out of the box, but without everybody's buy-in, there's going to be like not everything's going to work. Even like really good plans are just not going to work, but nonetheless I think that they still need to exist. Like we got into HUD and Section 8 and stuff. No, sorry, we got into, Derek brought up the incentives for
Mm.
like why an investor might want to uh,
Yeah, and I know
fund one of those
I
properties.
definitely get his point there of people do not go out of their way to say, I want to work with the government. That said, it can be effective. I have friends that do it,
Yeah,
and it is a
yeah.
regular income that comes in. But that said, yeah, I get it. It's certainly not an easy
No, but
fix,
it
but it is
needs to
something that should
be
be
an option, right?
definitely
It's
an
almost
option,
like,
and keep making it better because
right,
it's logical.
right.
Well, and you're saying everything is happening all at once. There's people that are going to respond to that, and
Yeah,
there are people that aren't. So let's
right.
try to get the people that are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you can only implement policy so much. I mean, we can only govern so much. At some point, it's just people are going to act as on their own and to their own accord and do what they're going. But to have the option to do that is extremely important. We can't say like, oh, it's not working because 99% of investors aren't taking it or like aren't getting on board with it. So let's just cut it entirely. Like that's dangerous too, because
Mhm.
that's still 1% of, investors not having that opportunity now or something.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
almost like the metaphor that comes to mind is like abortions, like the opportunity or the option for abortion it's so important that we have that option for people, and to force abortions on every person that doesn't fit the bill to be a parent would be horrific. And and in the same right, taking um, the option for abortion away entirely and making it illegal across the board is horrific. Like both of those are horrific concepts, but some of these ideas and policies, it's so good to have them in place, even if it's not like a sweeping solution, across the board. So
Yeah,
Right. Well,
having
just even on the COVID model, Carsey, I think you brought that up. You're like, if you're in rural, small town, then you don't need to be the same level of careful of someone that's in a heavily, densely populated area. Um, Same thing with these policies. People just see the world differently, and there isn't and shouldn't be a one size fits all model.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that was one of the things I took away was like, and we know this. This is not news, but like we can't run every city the same way. We can't expect all the cities to run the same way. And I realize that that's why there are local jurisdictions and policies and things like that. But like what will work for one city isn't going to work for every other city. And so getting down to brass tacks and getting that community involvement and saying, okay, well, what does work in this city? What do these people believe as a general rule, right? Like how can we make the most effective policies and changes and what kind of education does this city require? You know, do
Hmm.
if there were, for instance, a city where there was a lot of apathy, for instance, about homelessness, or people just despise the homeless community. You know, they have a million reasons to, and they don't want to see it. And I mean, I certainly can appreciate, I guess, to a point, that perspective, but maybe it would be helpful to have certain educations in those cities where people can just build more empathy in their own community about what homelessness is and how it develops, and how people are living with it. And hopefully instill some gratitude in themselves that they don't have to. You
Hmm.
can appreciate that someone is struggling with the things that they're going through, and at the same time be grateful that you're not going through it,
Sure.
and not with the judgment, but just with the like, how can I help now? What
Yeah.
can I do about that now?
Yeah, and DEI, as far as implementing these DEI policies, like in organizations and in companies and stuff, is so important because there are a few places where we go, school and work. Those are opportunities to introduce people to new ideas, or to expect somebody's going to go to those centers and get the education on their own is a big ask. To expect that people are going to start having these conversations at their dinner table just because is a big ask. But to say like, hey, this is something happening in the schools, or this is something at work, like we're actually corporate wide policy is going to be like once a month we all learn about DEI, and hopefully even like implement it, in our
Mhm.
office. Um,
Yeah. Well, and
yeah,
just making decisions with your wallet. I think spreading awareness of those companies that, there's been a very anti-DEI push, but there's a
yeah,
lot of big companies that are rejecting that and they're moving forward with it. And so spending money with those types of companies, being aware of who they are
right.
and
Hmm.
actively weed out those ones that don't support whatever your beliefs are there. I
Yeah.
think Costco is one of those big ones that is on the pro DEI front. What are some of
Yeah.
the other ones?
And they've seen their business increase
Hmm.
because they've firmly stood on the ground that we're not letting DEI go anywhere. We believe in the value of this. And the people that are supportive of that are supporting Costco. And clearly there's a lot of people because, their profits are continuing to climb,
Yeah. And I think
you know.
Lewis put it in a very easy to understand way of, um, and I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but what I took from it was say you've got 100 people in your company and 10 of them are Asian, for instance,
Mhm.
then you want to have those 10 represented. Where if your whole board of directors is all focused on one single population, it's not speaking for everybody equally. So just raising more awareness, I think, is very important with DEI.
Yeah, it's funny. I kept thinking about a graphic, at least in the beginning of this conversation. A graphic came to mind of an iceberg, that homelessness is like an iceberg. And the top that we see is the actual like homeless people, the people that are experiencing it right now on the street, and what we, what we can experience. But like
Hmm.
underneath of it is so many more issues. It's the biggest part of the iceberg, right? It's it's the poverty, it's the housing insecurity, it's the minimum wage, it's the high cost of childcare, it's the poor education, it's you know it,
Mental
it's
health issues.
mental health issues, substance abuse issues,
Hmm.
access to resources, trauma. Like it's just so interesting when you think of it that way because if you can appreciate that when you see someone who is experiencing homelessness, that's just the top of the iceberg that you're seeing. That's just the current situation that they're in that you can interact with. But when you can
Hmm.
appreciate that there is so much more under the surface that led them to that, there's so much more that is that's like caused these ripple effects of how it's harder for them to now navigate life. It's not just to like find a job and get your shit back together. It's like, well, now you have all these other things you have to figure out how to navigate, right? Because of
Oh,
this trauma.
a comedian said something hilarious that was talking about how community service is a punishment. It's like a step below going to jail. And why
Oh,
is that like volunteer? And that's very well said. It's like, oh, what did you do to have to
we have to
serve
pick
your
up
community?
trash.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're in trouble. So only then are you're forced to do community service. And how backwards is that? This should just be commonplace. Why is
That
it
is a
not?
great point.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'm for community service. I
Oh, I thought you
think
were going to say
that's
the
a good.
opposite. You're like,
Yeah.
I
No,
don't know,
I
but I'm
think
glad I know
it's
how to do it a lot.
no, but I
Just
think
kidding.
it's good that people have to do community
Yeah.
service when they get in
Oh
trouble.
yeah, it's something. It's just it
Yeah.
just has such a negative
The
connotation because
rhetoric
it's
or the
yeah,
connotation, yeah, it's
yeah.
a little backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. And and that last little point there at the end of being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think that's just a great little takeaway for everybody is if you're uncomfortable in a conversation, that's a good thing. That's progress.
Right. Yeah, you're stretching yourself.
Yeah. Well, I hope that everyone takes the time to check out Lewis's podcast, Record in Progress. Spoiler alert, I am on one of those episodes where we talk about a lot of other things that was really fun to do. And I commend him for all the work that he's doing, for him also creating a space where people can discuss things that are hard and get into the weeds about their beliefs. I think those gray spaces are going to be more and more important as we move forward, and it's awesome to see what his podcast is turning into. So I hope everybody checks that out.
Yeah.
Okay, consider it unpacked.
All right.
Good
Thanks,
seeing you
guys.
guys.
Thanks
Have
for
a good
another
Saturday, guys.
lovely conversation.
It was
Have a
good to
good
see you
Saturday.
guys. Okay,
You too.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
bye. Thanks for listening to Unpacking Homelessness. This episode was produced and edited by us. Our theme song is by Eric Lawson. You can find more of his music at soundcloud.com/eelaws. If you or someone you know would like to contribute to our show, get in touch with us at unpackinghomelessness@gmail.com. Until next time.